zero trust is probably the buzzword of the moment. Now, this is not Kuppinger-Cole research up here. This is purely a Google search. So I did a very quick Google search, and literally these are the companies that came up. Somewhere in their marketing, they are using zero trust. It's not to imply anything about any of them, other than they appear in the Google search when you put in zero trust. As you can see, loads and loads. And I could have kept going. I thought, well, I can't put any more on there because it'll get to be an eye test and it'll get too small. The thing to say here is that pick your products with care. Because how much of zero trust is just the latest marketing buzzword? It's our old technology product, and marketing have badged it with, now with added zero trust. And we've seen this. Yeah, security, I've been in this industry far too long. Yeah, security, we joke, is a bit of a fashion parade at times with the latest buzzword. Yeah, select your product with care. So let's just talk about what zero trust is and what it isn't. So I was privileged, it may not be quite the correct word, but I was privileged probably 12, 13 years back to actually be present when John Kindevig in Boston presented his first and coined the buzzword zero trust. So in answer to Martin's earlier question, well, what does zero trust mean? Well, John defined zero trust as being zero trust in your network. And of course, it's been a little bit adulterated because now it's zero trust on every single product. But John's original thesis was Jericho had it right, the border is disappearing, and therefore you have to design for zero trust in your network. So let's look at what zero trust is and what it isn't. So first of all, it's a state of mind. It's an architectural state of mind. This is about security architecture done right. And that's really difficult because traditionally what we've done is we've come on the back of IT or the back of network and we bolted products on. You can't do that anymore. It's when there is no difference between the internet and the intranet. I was CISO for a very large global pharmaceutical company for a number of years. We had 140,000 IP addresses on our intranet, and an intranet that went into 50 countries, including Russia and China, and was effectively flat. Now, if anyone believes, if anyone cares to argue with me afterwards over a drink, that that is anything other than the internet, yeah, effectively, for all intents and purposes, because trust me, we had Chinese state intelligence on there, we had Russian state intelligence on there, we knew that. Yeah, our design criteria was this network cannot, by definition, be secure. It's a business enabler. This stuff done right enables your business to go faster, quicker, and more securely. It's a combination of process and technology. It says, you've heard this before, I think you heard this in the keynotes, no lateral movement, reduced complexity. Complexity is the enemy of security at the end of the day. If you make it too complex, people either don't use it, can't use it, and therefore bypass it. Or it doesn't work for people, and security are just the people that like to say no, and therefore actually the business bypasses security. And we've seen that with cloud. And it's a unified experience. If you get it right, it doesn't half work for everyone, not only your users, but also your joint venture partners, your, what we call frenemies. Anyone heard the term frenemies, a horrible Americanism? Yeah, you compete in people in with a company in one place and you're a joint venture in another place. So especially in the drug industry, yeah, you'll be developing a drug jointly, but actually you'll be directly competing over other drugs. But of course, we need them to have access to research networks and other places. What it's not about trusting no one. It's not a next-generation perimeter. It's not VPN modernization. It's not an off-the-shelf product. You cannot go out and buy this. You have to architect it. And that, if you take nothing else away from this talk, please take that away. It is about architecting for the future. It's not an IT-only project. The business have to be involved. And it's about continual evolvement. So hopefully you all recognize this. This is what our networks used to look like, circa 1995-ish. Yeah, castle and moat design. And we had photocopiers, and we had a little bit of corporate email, and we had started buying corporate laptops in 95-ish. So therefore, the pressure came to say, look, could you put some wireless in? And about 2003-04, we started to put wireless in so that we could connect all those corporate laptops we were buying. Yeah, everyone recognize that? Anyone still operate in that environment? What does today's business look like? Well, much of the same. The difference is, anyone buy desktops in any quantity here? No, 90%. If you talk to Dell or HP or anyone else, corporates buy 95% laptops. And of course, we don't just buy laptops anymore, we buy Windows PCs, tablets, MacBooks, iPads, Chromebooks, you name it, we buy it depending on what the spending power of the executive is, and depending on which company and what the corporate culture is. Yeah, it could be anything. So goodbye to the gold build that we used to have with the corporate laptop. It's anything goes. Corporate smartphones, well, guess what? Now all the staff have phones and smartphones, therefore we've got a BYOD strategy. And because we've got a BYO strategy, Bill's wrong. Bill will come in a second. Photocopies and printers, outsource the management, of course. Anyone still run their photocopiers inside their organization? No, didn't think so. So guess what? You're drilling holes in your border so that that outsourced management company can manage those printers. And printers are what? They're a Linux box with a dial-up modem for fax still. Yes? They haven't been patched. Anyone patch their photocopiers? Well, it's a Linux box. Why aren't you patching your photocopiers? Because guess what? It's the biggest entry point into your network, and it's got a gigabit on it. So once you can compromise that photocopier, that Linux box inside the photocopier, you can jump off anywhere inside your organization. Third parties with their own laptops, and because of these two, what have we done? We've added guest wireless networking. And what else have we done? SaaS, email, Office apps, storage backend, etc., etc. And we're playing with IaaS, and we're playing with PaaS. And we've still got some legacy systems inside that good old DMZ. And what are we doing as an industry? Yeah, everything looks like a Band-Aid, doesn't it? We're putting sticking plasters in to make this lot work for the business. Yeah, and remember when we said up front, complexity is the enemy of good security? Well, here we are. And that's where we are today. And guess what? The bad guys are taking us for a ride. So what does tomorrow's business look like? Well, it looks a bit much like today's business, but we're going to think about it differently. So here's a zero trust business. Yeah, probably the only thing inside we're still doing is ERP, because it needs to be closely coupled. We actually put our plant and manufacturing online. Why? Because actually if you want to do things like just-in-time production, then your just-in-time partners need direct access to know what's going on in that plant. We've been doing it for a long time with IoT. So if you've got a contract with someone like British Oxygen to supply a nitrogen tank, guess what? They've had a sensor on that tank so they can keep it replenished. Since about the mid-90s, it originally started on a dial-up modem, then moved to an internet connection, etc., etc. We have partners who can direct connect because they need to direct connect into our business because that's our business model. Our users expect to be able to work seamlessly from wherever. Of course, we've got the Internet of Things coming. If you've got the Internet of Things coming, you've also got 5G and IPv6. That's what tomorrow's business looks like. Like it or not, it's coming to a business very close to your heart. And what does it look like? Well, it looks like a Chinese bazaar. Everybody sits on that network. Why? Because it's open for business. And that's what the business wants. So how do we do this from a strategy point of view? You need a strategy. Rip and replace sounds good, doesn't work. So, you know, if you've got an existing business, you cannot rip and replace it. As much as Cisco, who did the previous presentation, would love it because the bonuses for their salesmen will be fantastic, you are not going to rip and replace your entire global network and replace it with brand new Cisco routers with the latest iOS on it. You just can't afford to do it, or most people can't afford to do it, unless your name is Google. Reduction of complexity, hybrid, you can read it for yourself. Key assets are the big thing. Identify where your key assets are, and the business needs to tell you this. The fact is, most businesses don't have more than 20-odd key systems which are share price affecting. And if you don't know where those systems are, you can't design your business around it. Why is it 20? I don't know. Actually, when I joined AstraZeneca, they ran on 20. And I challenged them. And I said, why is it 20? And they said, we don't know. It just works. And I haven't found really a business yet that actually gets to around about 20. You're never going to achieve this in one step. And reuse what you can. Data, asset discovery, yeah, absolutely. Data classification, data flows, data protection, data security analytics. It is all about the data. Data is what we're trying to protect here, not the network. The network is just a method of getting packets of data from one place to the other, whether it's the internet, intranet, or anything in between. You've heard this from other people. Identity is key to this. How do you put trust back into the system? Yeah, user identity, device identity, and context identity. Context is the really important thing here, and you'll see why in a minute. Networks, no DMZs or VPN anymore, no security perimeter. Not as such. You might still have an intranet, don't get me wrong. You might want to pay for an intranet, but philosophically, think of your intranet as a quality of service boundary. It's there to make sure those packets transit between 2 points in your network in a defined, known time. It's not there as a security boundary. It has to be application and user-centric. It has to have authentication, authorization, etc., etc. And there's more than one way to implement it. Because again, this is about architecting it right for your business. Yeah, micro-segmentation, lots of tiny firewalls, software-defined perimeter, identity-aware proxies. There's lots of stuff out there that you can use to build this. And ultimately, you will have legacy. So if you're going to embark upon this journey, you need to understand with the business what stays as legacy and what needs protecting. I got faced with a microscope in a lab that was running XP. And we were trying to eliminate XP off our estate. We had 9 instances of XP left in the entire global network. One was connected to this microscope. And I had a discussion with the business and said, come on guys, 50 quid for a license, please just upgrade it. And they said, we can't. The microscope costs about $2 million. And it only runs, because the company's out of business, it only runs with XP. Because it's all 32-bit or 16-bit or whatever it was. Absolutely. So it isn't a 50 quid upgrade, it's a 2 million and 50 quid upgrade if we want to fix the problem. So we put it behind a baby firewall. Easy job. Yeah, lots of ways to do it. Data diodes are great. If you've never discovered data, Google data diodes. Great tool. But it's going to be a mix of that to deal with your legacy. Access management is absolutely key. Again, you've heard this before. I'm really not going to repeat stuff. Least privileged, centralized, dynamic, and adaptive. Adaptive is, again, really key here. Yeah, open to new authentication methods. And ultimately, you need to monitor and audit because you need to know what's going on. But it's not a question of monitoring necessarily the network, although you might choose to do that. You need to monitor the endpoints. You need to monitor where traffic is hitting data. So where traffic intersects with data, that is where you should be monitoring. Because at the end of the day, if you do this properly, you're moving to encrypted protocols. And at the end of the day, yes, if you've got port 80 running through a firewall, yes, you can monitor it because it's unencrypted, but you've got 443 HTTPS running through a firewall. What can the firewall do? And the answer is not much. You can do some clever packet, interception on it with certificates and other bits and pieces. I really wouldn't recommend that because when your users want to go and get their bank details, you're intercepting them, and they don't like that. And of course, the new generation of TLS is breaking that anyway. So you're not going to be able to do that. So why bother? Plan and architect around it. So monitor, detect, audit, and adapt. Absolutely. Adapt again is really key. This isn't a one-stop shop. Buy it, fit it, forget about it. This is about continual adaptation. And it's a journey. Simple as that. I think you've got that by now. And yeah, everyone's been saying this, trust but verify. The interesting thing, trust but verify is attributed to this guy, Ronald Reagan. The interesting thing that a phrase he used, I'm not sure he knew he was using it, but in this context, it actually is a Russian proverb. So to use it for the SALT treaty against the Russians is quite ironic. But that's where the phrase comes from. So let's have a look at a quick example, and I'm really indebted to the guys at BeyondCorp and Google, because these are public domain slides. They made these slides publicly available. So I'm stealing with pride. So BeyondCorp at Google. If you haven't heard of BeyondCorp, go Google it afterwards. BeyondCorp is a 6-year plan to move Google, and it's 6 years starting in 2012, so they've done it, to actually move into a zero trust environment. This is their mission statement. And I said, thanks to Rory Ward. I've seen his presentation twice. He does a really good. Again, after here, it's on YouTube. He did it first at RSA 2 years ago, and it was videoed and is publicly available. So if you want to see Rory do this presentation, he'll do it much more justice than I can. It's really good. Google it. It's on YouTube. RSA, BeyondCorp, Rory Ward. You can go and watch it. It's really good. But here's his 6-year mission: to have every Google employee work successfully from untrusted networks without the use of a VPN. In other words, any Google employee can go into Starbucks or the campus, and the security model they are using is 100% identical. It makes no difference where you are physically located. So what are the principles? Principle 1, connecting from a particular network must not determine which services you can access. In other words, the user experience is identical wherever you are. The access to services is granted based on what we know about you and your device. And finally, access to all services must be authenticated, authorized, and encrypted. Now, when Google say all services, they mean all services. So that's not only what Google uses, that means what you and I use. Who here uses Gmail or Google Search or anything else? This is one model fits everything. So this is whether I'm a Google member of staff accessing a Google DevOps environment inside Google, or whether I'm a Gmail user accessing my Gmail from home, the security model is 100% identical. Simplicity in security. How does it work? Really simply, wherever you are in the world, you go into a standard access proxy sitting in front of the particular server in the cloud that they are using. It is single sign-on, it is invisible to the person, And there is an access control engine that says you are either entitled to see it or you're not. If you are not entitled to see it, you can't even see the IP address. How do you make it work? And this is what they have done. So first of all, get intimate with your users. User management is really, really key to this. So they have literally a joined up arrangement with HR. So HR and IT are effectively one and the same. So if I leave one department on Friday and I join another department within Google on Monday, my access and what I can see automatically changes, because there is a one-to-one tie-up between my HR profile and my access profile within the IT systems. You need to get intimate with your devices, because ultimately it's about not only the device you have, but also the person you are. So every device needs to be certificated so that you can do that bit of magic. And Google will tell you that they actually have written some public domain software, because actually the devices out there in the real world didn't exist to be able to support this. So they've actually had to provide add-ons to some key devices, particularly Linux devices, which are now released as open source. So again, you can go and steal them with pride. And finally, a dynamic trust repository. So again, working with the business to create a trust repository so that you know who can access what when. A very simple set of rules. So, you know, if it's the lunchtime menu, all Google staff. Really easy. If you're in Google, you can access it. If it's a DevOps environment, are you a developer on this particular project? You can access it. How do you make it transparent for the users? And this is the key to it. This was their access control engine. I said it front ends identically every single Google server. And they've published it. Go read it for yourself. It's a really good story. Is it perfect? No. So one of the reasons it isn't perfect is it's what goes back to the original work that predates Zero Trust from Jericho, Jericho describes as the locus of control problem, which is if you all play inside my locus of control, I can make it all work for you. So as long as you have a Google device inside a Google environment with a Google username, then we can make it all work for you. Yeah, if you've got a log on the Google system, absolutely we can make it all work for you for Gmail and search and other bits and pieces. So in conclusion, what's the best practice? If you're not doing it already, you need to have a Zero Trust security implementation strategy. It's an architectural strategy. And you need to design internally with an internet mindset. If you can make this work on the internet, you can make it work better and more securely on the intranet. Your conclusions might be, but might not be, because it's going to vary for you. HTML delivery by default, vulnerability analysis on everything, leverage identity attributes, absolutely. You've heard this before, adaptive authentication, segment, and fix it once, fix it properly. And what are the business benefits? Well, yeah, it works. Security likes to say yes. And there's a bunch of related research. But with that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul.